Welcome to Living on the Edge. I'm Chip Ingram, and I am so glad you joined us. We just began a brand new series called Love, Sex, and Lasting Relationships. You know, I've never met anyone that doesn't want to be loved. I've never talked to anyone that doesn't want to have dynamic, great sex. And I don't know many people who don't want to find that great person to spend your whole life with. And that's what we're talking about. In fact, we just started last week, and we talked about two models of relationships. There's Hollywood's model, and we looked at that and said, you know something, that one's not working. And then we looked at God's model. And we're going to finish up on God's model in this session today. And I have to tell you, it's one of my favorites. It grew out of actually talking to a group of people that the great majority were not Christians. 100% of them said to me, my relationships aren't working. I'm here because either a judge told me it would be a good idea, or someone else who was divorced said, you know, go to this church, they really help you. And I had a session with a group of people that had a recent divorce. And so I asked them, how many of you learned how to do relationships? Did your mom or dad, or where did you learn them? And everyone had this puzzled look. And then I said, can I take just a minute? And I went over to the board and I drew a triangle. And I walked through a process about how most of us actually learn to do relationships, but we don't know it. And I said, how many of you learned it this way? Every hand goes up. I said, well, then I did a little something with that triangle that I'll show you in a minute. And I said to him, let me tell you something. There is a way to do relationships that will radically change what happened to you in the past. And when I got done with that teaching, the people said, that triangle was the most important thing I ever learned about doing relationships differently that I've ever seen. I want to share that triangle with you right now.
You need sex to get dates. You have to look a certain image, and everyone has sex. That's what the world's telling me.
It's a complete 180 from everything you hear. I mean, on television, the web, music. I mean, it's a complete contrast to popular culture. And it's exactly what my generation and younger generation needs to hear.
We just like to think of the good. We like to think of the nice, happy stuff, the love and the romance and all the success that can come from that. And I think that Hollywood has just hyped it up, what we've already put out there. And that God's way is the truth. And that the deceiver's done a great job of trying to overshadow that.
Because Hollywood's approach is all about how you look, isn't it? Hollywood's approach is all about how you feel. Hollywood's approach basically is what can you get? And when you want to get and they want to get, guess what happens? Conflict. It's based on two selfish, immature people trying to impress an image cast and act like something they're not to attract someone to have something that doesn't exist. And they play the game only to find there's a reality. You know what that is? That's Hollywood. You know what that is? Pretend. You know what that is? That is deception. You know what that is? You are being suckered, and you are being deceived, and you are buying in, and you are filling your mind with songs and videos and books and TV messages that are telling you something that is a non-reality, and it doesn't work. When are we going to wake up? When are we going to wake up? We keep doing the same thing over and over and over with the same results. Why? Because it's all about finding the right person. And you know what it ends up being? It ends up being all about you. It ends up being all about the world revolving around you. And you trying to satisfy you. And there is a way which appears or seems right to a man or right to a woman. And the end thereof is, it's death. And so I come here with a heart of compassion. I come here to say, you know something? Don't do it the way I did it. Do it God's way. You can have what is so awesome and so good, but I'm going to tell you on the front end, it's going to be harder. You will be swimming upstream. But man, you can be loved, and you can love in ways and at depths that are unimaginable. And with that comes, at the right time and the right way, a sexual intimacy that isn't some sort of one-night stand, and there's no shame, and there's no all the baggage that comes with it. It's about communication and exaltation and worship and intimacy the way God intended. He created it. It's a great thing. Many of you sitting in here thinking, I don't know if I believe in marriage. I want it. I long to be loved, but you know something? It didn't work for my parents. Didn't work for my sister. Didn't work for my best friend. And so what happens? We got a generation of men that are afraid to make a commitment. We have a generation of women who are saying, I don't know if I want it. And it's a catch-22, isn't it? Isn't it hard? Because part of you long for this relationship, but when you look at how marriages are playing out, and not outside the church, but inside the church, you say, whoa, I want you to know you can be the exception. You can be the exception when you focus not on finding the right person, you become the right person. You focus not on falling in love, you focus on walking in love. You focus not on fixing your eyes on this person, that they're going to be the answer to your life. You fix your eyes on God and say, use this relationship to make us both like Christ. And then step number 4, God's way, is when this fails, not if it fails. When it fails and you have a fight, things go south, you repeat and go back up to step 1, 2, and 3. You see, when my relationship with my wife isn't going well, what I used to do is blame her. In other words, right? So she must not be the right person, or she's not coming through for me. Instead, I go to step 1 and I ask, am I the right person? Am I becoming the man that she needs? Do you see the difference? Become the right person, walk in love, fix your hope on God, and then when it does fall apart, and it will fall apart, go back and ask, am I the right person? And the rewards, not only is the success rate phenomenal, the reward, the legacy, the blessing. I mean, I got to tell you, because I didn't grow up this way. The joy and the intimacy after over 25 years, I am more in love with my wife after 25 years than I was in day 1 or year 1. And we have worked at it, and we have read books, and we've gone to counseling, and we've wrestled with tough issues, and we've raised 4 kids. But the joy in the intimacy, when you do it God's way, it is possible. Now, emotionally, have I had times in my marriage where I wanted to say, hey, forget this. I'm going to find someone who's easier to live with? Of course I have. Anyone who tells you they haven't thought those thoughts is lying. It's what you do with those thoughts that makes the difference. Do you choose to walk in love, or do you buy into the images on the screen? And you know what? This isn't theory for me. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. Everything I'm telling you I learned, and I learned the hard way. And my wife, she learned the hard way. She came out of a very difficult relationship. She came to Christ because she was abandoned. I met her when she had these 2 small kids. And I want to tell you, for the last 25 years, with, being very human, 3 steps forward, 2 steps backward, trusting, pressing ahead, hitting walls, wondering, what are we going to do? Working through multiple issues in our marriage. Now, with 25 years behind us, I've got 3 grown sons. And I've watched every one of them walk with God. I've watched every one of them pick a godly mate. We saw a revolution occur. I came from a baggage past, my wife from a baggage past. The Jesus of Nazareth, who is real and is alive and was risen from the dead and is alive, said, do it this way. Don't do it Hollywood's way. Do it my way. And it's hard, and we went upstream, and it was difficult, and I want to tell you this. It is rich, and it is good, and the reward is over the top. And now I see my kids in a legacy passing the torch. And I see them learning to become the right person and to walk in love and fix their hope on God. Which model are you going to choose? Which one do you unconsciously believe the most? By and large, the Church of Jesus Christ has put so much of Hollywood's material in their mind and their thinking that by and large, we as Christians live by model 1, not by model 2. And the results in the Christian families are exactly like non-Christian families. Here's what I want to offer to you. Yours can be different. Yours can be different. Let me review by giving you a little picture. Turn to the next page, and you'll notice there's a couple triangles. And the first triangle there you see that pops up, this is how you and I, most of us, are being brainwashed to do relationships. Where does it all start? Physical attraction, right? I mean, all relationships are built around physical attraction. If you're a guy, you say, hey, pretty tight jeans, little cleavage, tight sweater, I think I'm attracted. And ladies, it used to be, before the soft porn shifted, and now it's for women as well. It used to be, he has a strong chin. And women aren't looking at strong chins anymore. They're looking at men's rear ends. And we're saying, hey, and you know what happens then? There's a physical attraction, and you can be in a Starbucks, you can be in a movie theater, you can be at a Christian singles group, you can be in a church, and you look, and there's a little chemistry, and if there's physical attraction, then what's the next thing that happens? The emotions kick in. In the world, it's usually at a bar. A little bonding occurs, the physical attraction, usually the first night on campuses now, we call it hooking up. The agreement is no relationship, we're just going to sleep together. It's all about lust. We're going to build a bond with one another. We're going to pretend that it doesn't have any impact on our emotions, our psyche, or our soul. Scripture says it does. Even when you bond with a prostitute, there's a bond that occurs. And so the physical attraction occurs, and then if there's some emotion, if it was a good experience, depending on how far you went, and there's an emotional attraction, then you go into the ooey gooey, I'm in love, the emotions kick in, your brain cells kind of shut off, your IQ drops 30 to 60 points, and then you start spending money you don't have, you start going dilly-dally around. Now, they've done research. I mean, there's chemical changes in the brain when you're infatuated. Infatuation lasts anywhere from 6 weeks to, on the outside, about 18 months. It is a very predictable part of what happens in a relationship. Built on physical attraction. You can be infatuated with the person and not even know their name. You can meet them in a bar, meet them in a Starbucks, spend the next 24 hours together and think, I'm in love, and know nothing about them, their family, their character, their beliefs, anything. And then then what happens? If the glue keeps and the emotions keep kicking in, then you get into their social circle. And you get to see them with their friends, and they see you with your friends. Maybe you meet their families. And so if it's still clicking, then you realize, you're spending more and more time. You get to actually know the person and their personality. And you find out whether they might potentially be a good husband or a good wife or a good father or a good worker, or whether they have some level of character and there's chemistry. And then if that all fits together, and in our day, usually by now you've moved in together, anywhere from 2 months to 2 years. But it's an amazing thing. People still have this need and desire for permanency. And when you want to make it permanent, what do we want to do? We want to get married. And the moment we think of married, even unbelievers, what do they say? They realize it's sacred. It's a spiritual event. So what do? We need to find one of those, pastor types or minister types or rabbi types. And then, they've not followed God, listened to God, done it God's way. But we want to have it in a church. And then you play the game, and you notice that triangle is upside down. And I'd like you to think of that triangle as the pyramids. And I don't know how long the pyramids have been in existence, but I'd like to suggest that if they were built upside down, they would not still be in existence. That because they're built with that base and with those edges, they have withstood amazing amounts of wind and sand, and they are stable because of how they're built. And I want to suggest that if you take that triangle or pyramid and flip it over, you will have God's design. And that we've been doing it exactly the opposite. And the place to start in relationships is not with the physical, but with the spiritual. And the first thing you ask is this person a believer? Not are they just a believer, are they a committed believer? And you're looking for character and vision and values and the quality of the person. And they don't even get on your relational radar screen until you know, man, this is the quality of man or quality of woman, because flesh comes and flesh goes. God sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, the Lord weighs the heart. And you're one of his children, so you're going to weigh the heart. Now, don't get me wrong. There is chemistry and there's a physical side. We'll talk about it later. But here's the priority. Number two, then, what you want to do is you want to see him socially. Don't ask him out. Heaven forbid, you'll mess up the whole thing. Get around him socially. Get on a ministry team. Serve with him. Go on a mission trip. Hang out where there's 4 guys and 3 girls, and do something where you can just get with them socially. See how they react, how they respond to their family, to their friends. Are they unselfish? Are they caring? Are they loyal? Are they as real out there with people when they're not trying to impress you? And then if you still see what you like and you keep praying and God leads, then get to know him. And are you ready for this? This may sound crazy, but I did college age and career age ministry about a decade. And I just said, you know something? Can I give you a clue? Don't pair up too early. It's death to the relationship. You want to really get to know him in a group. And spend time reading, thinking, praying, working. Do things other than go on these artificial little dates where we're all, hey, let's really get to know one another. Okay, I'll dress up and look my best, and you dress up and look your best. Okay, what do you want to do? Let's go to a movie. Yeah, that'd be really cool. That way we can sit silently next to each other for 2.5 hours, have no interaction. Okay, and then we'll pick up something to eat. Okay, yeah, great. Deep. Get to know them. Ask them questions. Find out what their dreams are. What are they reading? What are they thinking? Who do they admire? What do they like best about their dad? What do they like best about their mom? How did they respond when their parents broke up? What's God teaching them? Who's their best friend? Why? Get to know them. And after you do that, before you pair off, and if God keeps leading, then keep your emotions behind. But if they're spiritually qualified, you see that they're the real deal in relationships, and you get to know them, and there's a personality fit, and God begins to do something in your heart, then allow your emotions to kick in. And you know what? If you'll keep your emotions behind God's leading, you will save yourselves a boatload of heartache and pain and going through the cycle, or what I call doing the dance. And you get wounded and you wound, and you get wounded and you wound, and you're practicing for your divorce. Keep your emotions behind God's leading, and then as God leads, and this person is of character and of quality, and you know them, and you learn to love them, not just how they look, then at the right time and the right way, you come together, and then that honeymoon is actually something special. And you experience the God-ordained gift of sex. And it's communication, and it's worship, and it's alignment of the emotions and the social and the relational, and you come together without baggage and guilt and all the images of being used and abused or manipulating. And Hebrews 13 says the marriage bed is holy. God is not a prude. He doesn't watch couples get married and go, oh, here's the part, Gabriel, that embarrasses me. Michael, don't look. All of heaven, He created you. He says it is good. Celebrate it. Praise the Lord. It's a symphony. And what we have is pseudo-sex and pseudo-intimacy where people don't make love anymore. They just have sex. And sex can't sustain a relationship. And that's why it gets more kinky and more perverted if it's based on that. Let me ask you a couple questions as we close up tonight. Personal evaluation. Which triangle most represents your approach to building lasting relationships? I mean, honestly, you don't have to tell anybody else, but when you look at God's way, the right side up triangle, or Hollywood's way, the upside down triangle, honestly, in your heart of hearts, which one of these reflects the way you go about doing relationships? Second question is, what would your present and or future relationship, which one do you want it to look like? God's way or Hollywood's? I mean, honestly, which one do you really want it to look like? Third, what specific steps do you need to take to begin implementing God's secret to a lasting relationship? And if you want to know, just stare. Stare at that triangle that's God's. Spiritual, social, psychological, emotional, physical. You know, some of you that are in a relationship, you need to go get a cup of coffee, and you need to look at that triangle, and you need to have a honest conversation and say, you know, we've skipped a few steps. We need to back off and back up. We need to do this God's way. For some of you that are married, you've got holes in your relationship. You know, see, God wants you to be best friends. He wants you to be lovers. And He wants you to be spiritual soulmates. And by the way, men, you know, most men are a little frustrated, a little bit more than the average woman in the sexual arena. And the average woman is asking the average man, you know what? If there was spiritual intimacy, I would feel cherished and long to love more. But since there's no spiritual intimacy, I feel used when it comes to the arena of sexual intimacy. And men, I know we're not very good at it. I know most of our wives are, you know, way more spiritual than us. But I'll tell you what, you grab your wife's hand once a day and say, let's just bow our heads, and you start praying with her 30, 60 seconds. You can even start with silent prayer. It will radically change, not just the spiritual dynamic, it'll change that whole triangle. So where would your relationship need a little improvement? And then finally, let me give a word to the uninvolved singles. And by uninvolved, you're here, you're not in a serious relationship, okay? You might like someone, they like you, but you're not in a serious relationship. Can I give you one word? Don't do the dance. Just refuse to do the dance. Just decide you're not going to go about relationships based on the physical. He likes me, I like her, I tell him, tell her, and go through. Then we go out on one date and we play the game. Don't do the dance. Refuse to buy the lie. Develop a completely different approach to getting to know, to meeting, and developing relationships with the opposite sex. A word to those that are involved. I mean, you're here, you're single, but I mean, you're an item. I'd like you to sit down in the next 48 hours and open up the notes with that triangle and walk through the spiritual, social, psychological, emotional, and physical and have an honest conversation. Are we where we need to be in each one of these areas? In fact, I've had a number of couples say, you know something, I know we're Christians and we've sort of decided to kind of obey most of the commandments, but we're living together. And if we're going to do this God's way, we need to move out. And they did. And they started over. And in many cases, it revolutionized their relationship. And in some cases, they dodged a bullet and found out they just avoided decades and decades of heartache. If you're in a relationship, I challenge you. Go get a cup of coffee or a Coke and walk through each one and honestly say, where do you think we're at? Are we on the right track? Because see, God wants you to have love. He wants you to have great sex, and He wants you to have a relationship that lasts. And then finally, a word to those that are maybe divorced or widowed, or maybe you just got dumped, and man, you just feel wounded. Can I just say, don't get involved in any relationship for a year or 18 months. You are not emotionally whole. The worst decisions you'll ever make is when you lose a mate or coming out of divorce or you were in a serious relationship and it just broke up. The rebound will kill you. Just get whole. I love what Dr. Les and Leslie Parrott say. They say if you attempt to build intimacy with another person before you've done the hard work of becoming a whole and healthy person yourself, then every relationship will be an attempt to complete the wholeness that you lack and will end in disaster. You've got to get whole. In fact, the people that are ready for a serious relationship are the people that don't need one. Can I say that again? The people that are really ready for a serious relationship are the people that don't need one. They aren't needy like, love me, love me, love me. You make my life work out, rescue me. Or, I got to rescue someone. I got to help someone because it makes me feel fulfilled. That's dysfunctional relationships. It's when I am loved, I am affirmed, I am God's, I am whole, I am healthy. I would like and desire a relationship. I don't need one to be a fulfilled, loved, cared for, significant person. I have that in Christ. And when you have that, you're the most attractive person on the planet. Final word here to married couples is maybe one of those areas is a little out of balance. And if you're married, have that same conversation I asked those that are involved in a significant relationship. Get out that triangle and do a little evaluation. And talk honestly with one another. And by the way, this is not opportunity to bash your mate. This is opportunity. Don't say, hey, you know what, I'm glad you said, this is the one that really bugs me, dear, right here, Or, dear, I'm glad we went to that 722. It was mostly for the kids, but we just wanted to see what was going on. I have been so angry for the last 7 years. Don't do that. Try, thanks for asking. I think we need to talk about this right here, this one in the middle. I feel a little shortchanged. And honestly, sometimes I have some anger in my heart towards you. And I know that's not good. Let's come up with a plan to deal with that. My prayer, my passion, my heart's desire is that you would think deeply about how you're going about relationships. And that some of you tonight would decide, as radical as it may sound, look at the evidence and decide to do it God's way.
As we close our time together, I want to remind you, there is hope. There is great hope for you and your relationships. These two triangles, they're pretty simple, but they give us a very clear basis to evaluate our relationships. And,
You know, this isn't just for single people. And parents, this isn't just something to, oh, my kids, my teens, my preteens, they sure need to see this. They do. But I can't tell you how many men I've talked to that have hit the midlife years and had a midlife crisis and basically unconsciously bought in over the years Hollywood's model. And because the fizz goes out of the marriage, or how many women have said, I don't feel the emotional connection, I don't feel loved. And all of a sudden, they start doing the upside down triangle, and pretty soon things fall apart. You know what? That right side up triangle, the spiritual base, you know, the psychological, social, emotional, building it God's way, that has been a good litmus test for my own relationship. You know, I realize sometimes when I don't feel very fulfilled, I realize, well, you know, am I really praying with my wife? Spiritual. Are we having any fun socially with people and enriching our lives? Emotional. Are we taking some walks, having some fun? When's the last time we planned some time away? Here's what I want you to know. It will take great energy and great intentionality. We all want a great relationship. Here's the deal. Most of us aren't willing to pay the price, and most of us will never do it alone. You know, one of the great resources we have, and God has used this literally here and around the world, is small group resource, Love, Sex, Lasting Relationships. It's a 10-part series. And I actually know a guy who went on a family vacation. And each night he showed one of these little half-hour programs, and then as a family began to talk about relationships and building them the right way. Now, I don't know if that's your idea of a great vacation, but maybe there's 2 or 3 other couples or 4 or 5 single people that you say to yourself, you know something? This struck a chord. Long term, I want this kind of a relationship. I want to learn how to build it right. But most of us, you'll have the desire, God will speak to you, you'll say, I really need to do that. And you know, 2 weeks from now, not a lot will change. May I encourage you to go on the website or contact us and say to yourself, I'm going to dig in. I want this kind of a relationship, and I'm going to have to work at it, and I need other people to help me. You know, God's got a great plan. You have the Spirit of God living in you if you're a believer, and if you don't, He wants you to know He can give you everything you need to have this kind of relationship as you draw near to Him and then draw near to others in a way that will really make a difference.